What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Islam Makhachev's team response to cheating allegations. In the wake of UFC 284, Dan Hooker took to Twitter with some pretty serious accusations. In a series of tweets, he accused lightweight champion Islam Makhachev of using an IV to rehydrate after weigh-ins. According to Hooker, who lost to Makhachev back in 2021, the lightweight champ hired a local nurse to give him an IV. That information supposedly made its way back to Hooker, who then followed up his tweet to call Islam Makhachev a cheat, point blank. In the wake of the accusations, Makhachev's manager, Rizvan Magomedov, has issued a statement on the matter, denying that his client used an IV. "We all know this is completely BS, Magomedov said. The guy is a loser, he's salty, and just looking for attention. And that's it." The theory that Makhachev used an illegal IV has continued to make the rounds on social media, and has divided the fight community. On one hand, many have pointed to pre-fight photos of Makhachev before his fight with Charles Oliveira and before his recent fight with Volkanovski. Ahead of the bout with the featherweight champion, Makhachev seemed to look more rehydrated following weigh-ins than he did against Oliveira. At the same time, there's been a theory floating around that Makhachev was sporting a bruise on his inner arm in his pre-fight photo in the same place an IV would likely be administered. Closer investigation reveals that the photo in question was taken before weigh-ins and prior to any point where Makhachev would have been rehydrating with an IV. Bantamweight #1 contender Sean O'Malley weighed in on the topic during a recent episode of the Bro Malley podcast, saying,
"It's so stupid that it's illegal, but it is. You're not allowed to rehydrate that way. They're trying to make it to where you don't want to cut as much or whatever, I think. I mean, you should be able to. I mean, Dan Hooker, I wouldn't just make that up. That IV could have very well helped him not get finished, and that very well could have gave him an extra boost for sure."
Of course, as many have continued to point out online, Hooker has provided little proof of his claims, leading many to question whether or not they're in fact legitimate. What do you think about the situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Belal Muhammad slams Colby Covington. To his credit, streaking welterweight Belal Muhammad has been calling for a fight with anyone and everyone. Most notably, Muhammad has continued to seek fights with both Khamzat Chimaev and Colby Covington. However, neither matchup has seemed to pan out. During a recent interview with Helen Yee, Muhammad spoke about the potential fight with Covington, saying,
all they presented was Colby. They said Colby was down, and then the next week they said he wasn't down, and then they said he was down again, then they said they can't find him again. So I don't know what's happening with him.
So far, there's been no word on when Covington will return to the octagon following his dominant victory over bitter rival Jorge Masvidal last year. Since then, Covington has been linked to a #1 contender fight with Khamzat Chimaev. However, that fight was never booked, leaving the former two-time title challenger without an opponent for this year. Who do you want to see Covington and Muhammad fight next? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Daniel Cormier reacts to fans calling for him to skip commentary for Jon Jones' fight. Given the long-standing rivalry between Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones, some fans have begun to call for the former two-division champ to skip out on commentary duties for Jones' highly anticipated return to the octagon next month. While Cormier, Joe Rogan, and Jon Anik are expected to handle commentary duties, fans have questioned whether Cormier can remain impartial when working the fight. After a fan asked him to skip the fight, Cormier responded saying, "Okay, any other fights you want me off? I took last night off at your suggestion. Was the experience much more enjoyable?" Jon Jones was also asked recently about whether or not he has a problem with Cormier commentating his fight. Surprisingly, on Jones' side, the feud sounds dead. As he explained, in addition to the fact that he isn't competing against Cormier, he's actually happy that his former rival has found a home for himself in the broadcasting booth in retirement. What do you think? Is this rivalry alive and well? Or is Jones right in that the two men have gone to a point where their rivalry no longer needs to be brought up? Give us your thoughts in this comment section below. Before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Javier Mendez reacts to UFC 284 main event. Going into UFC 284, there was much talk about whether or not Islam Makhachev would struggle with his longtime friend and training partner Khabib Nurmagomedov in his corner. Although American Kickboxing Academy head coach Javier Mendez was confident ahead of the fight, fans wondered if the Eagles' absence behind the scenes was cause for concern. In the wake of the fight, Mendez teased a potential rematch, saying,
I definitely think the UFC is going to want to see a rematch, so I don't see no reason why they wouldn't do a rematch. I think it would be great. I think the fans would love it. I think Islam would be down for it also, and obviously Alex is, because, I mean, come on, he calls himself Alexander the Great, and he lives up to that name, so there's a reason why he's, you know, and he's such a gentleman.
In addition, Mendez also shared what Khabib thought of the fight. To his surprise, prior to the scrap, the Eagle predicted that Volkanovski would present the toughest test of Makhachev's career. While Mendez didn't agree at first, as the fight went on, he realized that the Hall of Famer's prediction turned out to be true. Do you think we ever see a Makhachev versus Volkanovski rematch? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Mateusz Gamrot steps in to fight Jalin Turner at UFC 285. After Dan Hooker withdrew from his highly anticipated UFC 285 showdown with Jalin Turner, there was much speculation as to whether or not Turner would be removed from the card, or if the UFC would look to ultimately reschedule the bout, given fight week being just a few weeks away. This week, news surfaced that top-ranked lightweight Mateusz Gamrot would be stepping in to fight Turner on short notice. Although the fight has yet to be formally announced by the UFC, a source confirmed the news with MMA Junkie after Gamrot posted on his Instagram story hinting that he was taking a fight on short notice. Gamrot will, of course, be looking to return to the win column after having a 4-fight win streak snapped by Beneil Dariush late last year. After the loss, Gamrot found himself ranked 7th on the UFC's official lightweight rankings. With Turner sitting in the 10th spot, the fight will certainly have high stakes for the former KSW champion. Of course, he'll have to get through Jalin Turner, a fighter who has won his last 5 fights, with all those wins coming by finish. How do you see this fight playing out? UFC fighter pulls out of fight. News surfaced this week that Ukrainian fighter Denis Bondar had been forced out of his scheduled showdown with Ode Osbourne on February 25th at UFC Vegas 70. The injury is the latest string of bad luck for Bondar, who had his arm broken in his UFC debut during a scramble against the cage. The injury, which occurred just over a year ago, has kept Bondar on the sidelines ever since. Replacing him against Ode Osbourne will now be Charles Johnson, who's in the midst of a 2-fight win streak that recently saw him TKO Jimmy Flick back in January at Fight Night Strickland vs. Imavov. As he looks to get his 3rd straight win, he'll have to overcome a hungry Ode Osbourne, who was most recently knocked out in the first round of his August fight with Tyson Nam. How do you see the fight going? Drop your predictions in the comments section below. And now for our breaking news story of the day. Kevin Lee talks UFC return. After Eagle FC stopped holding cards in the United States, many wondered what the future would hold for UFC veteran Kevin Lee. After going 1-4 in his last 5, Lee was released by the UFC. Ultimately, he signed with Eagle FC thanks to the promotion's 165-pound division. Now, with Lee back in the UFC, many are wondering what will be different this time around for Lee in the promotion. During a recent interview, he spoke with TMZ about how he matches up with the rest of the welterweight division, including Leon Edwards, predicting that he could win the title thanks to his wrestling. When looking at the top of the welterweight division, Lee knows most of his competition is fellow wrestlers. The way he sees things, however, nobody is truly testing them.
These guys are good wrestlers, but how does Khamzat do when somebody is trying to take him down? How does Colby do when somebody's trying to take him down? And I feel like I pose a lot of those questions, and my style matches up against a lot of those guys. I'm faster, I'm just as explosive, I'm just as strong, and I got the technique to back it up. So I think it's going to solve a lot of cardio issues. It's going to be great for my career.
Interestingly enough, prior to signing with the UFC, Lee had been interested in signing with the PFL. According to the former interim UFC lightweight title challenger, the promotion was telling him all the right things and were set to pay him a considerable amount of money. When push came to shove, however, Lee knew deep down that more than money or even a potential showdown with Jake Paul and PFL, the one thing he truly wanted is to be the best in the world. Who do you want to see him fight in his first fight back in the UFC? Today's video was packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to see more videos just like this. See you next time.